Hello and welcome to the final session of People Matters 2022. This session is going to begin in just a minute or two as we let everybody come and join in. We'll be beginning very shortly. Thank you. Okay, I think it's the time for us to start this session. A very warm welcome to everybody joining the final session of our People Matters virtual HR conference presented by RDI Worldwide. For those of you joining the session for the first time, a very warm welcome. My name is Gordon Dudley, CEO of RDI Worldwide. For those of you who have been in previous sessions, welcome back. This session is going to be run very much like the previous sessions we've had. It's going to be in a panel discussion format, and I do encourage anybody to ask questions. If you click the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to ask questions there, and we'll take those questions to the panel after we've had our main discussion. This topic, or the topic of this particular session, is critical skills for growth in a volatile marketplace. And I think that this is a very timely opportunity to talk about this particular topic. And for the purposes of that, we have gathered a really fantastic panel together from a diverse industry background and also personal experience. So let me introduce them first before we go into a little bit more introduction about the session. Firstly, Blair Abbott has been with Mirae Asset for over 12 years and is currently the Head of Global Marketing and Business Development. Before joining Mirae Asset, Mr. Abbott worked at Franklin Templeton Investments in both Toronto and then Korea, where he held multiple positions focused on cross-border product analysis, product management, and implementation of global processes. Originally from Canada, he has been at the forefront of a Korean company expanding rapidly, and within financial services, it will be a great opportunity to hear his experiences. Thanks for joining, Blair.
Thank you, Gordon. Wonderful to be here.
Secondly, we have Sunny Kim, currently the Head of People and Organization at Puma. She's an HR practitioner with more than 14 years in the field, and she's also an advocate of HR best practice. In her experience, she has touched every aspect of HRM. Her experience as an HRBP and also as a talent management specialist are two great reasons why we wanted her to be on this panel with us today. Thank you for joining, Sunny.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And our third panelist for today's session is Tomas Centeno, currently with Dyson, acting as the Head of APAC region based in Singapore. He recently moved from Korea, having been with Dyson for 5 years. Formerly, he was with Philips and also P&G, working in Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, and France. Originally from Portugal, he has a deep experience in building multinational teams, growing organizations, and fostering talents. Thomas, a very warm welcome to you.
Thanks a lot, Gordon. Pleasure to be here.
So as I was putting together the agenda with my team for this People Matters conference this year, we took a look at some of the topics we addressed last year and thought about some of the topics which we think would be most relevant and useful for the current situation. we found, of course, that the volatile market situation and pandemic status is still with us 1 year on, now 2 years in. And so we felt that building on some of the sessions that we've been having recently within RDI, about the dichotomy of how there is on the one hand a great resignation and many people exiting the workforce, whilst at the same time, from a lot of companies, a perspective of difficulty in hiring great talents, that somehow there must be something changing or evolving within skills, within the demand for skills and the supply of skilled talent. And so that's why we wanted to really dig into this particular topic today. I'd like to definitely take a lens on the Korea-specific situation, as well as the macro global view as well. So it is definitely an important topic, and it's one that we at RDI definitely come up against when we are working with our clients, as they feel that there are potentially skills which they are looking for, which they are maybe struggling to find. And so that's why I think it would be great to jump into the first question around this. I'm going to come to Thomas first, since now you're based in Singapore with a responsibility for the whole APAC region, and maybe have some kind of contrasting views of the different regions. But tell us, why do you think that this is an important topic to look at this time?
So the one thing I would break this into two different parts. One, which is the macroeconomic environment in which we live, and things like COVID, but anything which has that size of impact in the business forces people to be a lot more, or businesses to be a lot more adaptable. And for us, one of the skills that we always have traditionally looked at in Dyson, but now more so because of the ever-changing environment, is adaptability. And that becomes a key skill to be able to navigate these times. There's a second component to that, which is the people's ability to be experts at any skill set starts to be quite hard, because the amount of information out there is a lot, and it's ever changing. And by the time we learn about anything and we try to implement it in the same way over and over again, in a couple of years' time, it'll change. So people's ability to keep at the top end of their game in terms of skill set is very, very difficult. And so we come back to the point again of adaptability. And adaptability is not just because the environment around which companies do business can change very rapidly, as we saw with COVID. It's also the skills are changing rapidly, and therefore people just need to be adaptable to learn new skills and changes as they go along. So we start seeing a career not as a single skill, but as an evolution of skills.
I think that's a great point. Volatility is change, and change requires, like you said, that adaptability. I think that's a great point. Blair, let me come to you and ask for your perspectives on what you see as perhaps specifically within your role at Mirae Asset within the financial services sector, perhaps, of some of the skills which have kind of come up recently to be more highly in demand.
Right. Well, I think obviously as digital basically increases its kind of grasp on everything that we do, obviously anything related to data, or anything related to how we access each other, clients, or data, and everything through I guess digital kind of channels has kind of been amplified dramatically. I think another one that's kind of, I guess, it's a little bit more subtle and it's a little bit more nuanced, but it's about the soft skills, right? And how we have to deal with people. And as Thomas just referenced, there's been a lot of need for adapting to certain scenarios. So people are a little bit more on edge. So I think having the right soft skills and how you deal with people internally, and I guess having the right EQ, right? And how you kind of adapt to certain situations. And then also even deal with clients. Because, as you talked about looking at things across different regions, for example, in Korea, we never went into a hard lockdown. But if you go back to like 2020, I would be contacting potential clients in Europe, or vendors in the US, Europe, Latin America. And some of these people were going through quite harsh conditions and lockdowns, right? So being able to adapt and I guess adjust on the fly in how you communicate and deal with these individuals is, I think, a very great skill to have. And then just going back and just touching on, I guess, the data aspect of things as well, because there's so much data available and so many more tools in which to capture this data and then analyze and refine and pull theses out of these data. It's just basically, amplified so much over the last 5, 10 years. So I think more and more that skill becomes very important, even at very discrete levels, right? So even from a day-to-day, now data, even how we pull data and how we utilize it to make decisions is just becoming something that's happening more and more. So I would say those are two skills that really pop up to the top of the list for me.
Absolutely. And the thing that you mentioned there makes me reflect about the time in my education. And I'm going to kind of date myself here, where in the course of my education, it went from not allowing any information sources in exams to going to a point where in some cases you could take a certain amount of information in with you, because the exam was no longer about what you had memorized and learned, but how you're going to synthesize the data and handle that data. So that was definitely. A transition, and I'm sure it's come on another massive development since I was at school back in the last century, if we put it in those terms. Sunny, let me come to you and kind of build on from what Blair said there with soft skills. The media would kind of tell us that things like EQ and communication, decision-making, creativity, all these buzzwords which are flying around in the media. From your HR perspective, is this really new? Is this, do we need more of these skills, or is it more that we've become more aware of their necessity and effectiveness? What's your perspective on that?
Oh, well, my perspectives on this topic is like more and more, many companies around the globe are finding the post-pandemic ways of working. And even before the current crisis, well, changing technologies and new ways of working were disrupting our jobs and skills. Now we are talking HR, and many companies, we are talking about like how we could set up a standard for working from home, because it's pretty new working, and what would be the right skills and competencies needed for this rapidly changing world. So, well, I think that now it's more about how organizations can reskill and upskill the workforce to develop new business models in the post-pandemic era. And I think, well, as a HR, I think many employers actively seek out candidates who can cope with changes and adapt to changes and respond well to changes. Well, remember, like a decade ago, well, when I started my career, the questions most frequently asked in a job interview was, what is your strength in terms of your work? How familiar are you with this program, that system? It was all about the hard skills. But now we are talking about, we want to know about how flexible you are, how adapt to changes. What do you think about emotional resilience? That's the questions that I usually throw to the candidates. So I think that, well, then we want to know the how we can identify candidates who are capable of adapting to quickly to change, are open to innovation, and will communicate effectively with teams to build an agile and flexible workplace. So my experience in Puma, well, I think we need to be very flexible in skills. Like you mentioned, like all the skills required for this rapidly changing market, like emotional intelligence, well, the adaptability, flexibility. Well, for example, like a classical way of doing HR, like back then, it was mostly about the operation of work and tasks. But now we are talking about the employer branding. And it is pretty much the same as what marketing people do. So be creative, innovative, and creating content with creativity. That's what matters for now doing my job, like HR. So if you do not like adapt to changes and then well, try to like learn new things and be flexible in skills, then it will definitely be hard to survive in this rapidly changing market, I guess.
I think that's a good point, and it's interesting to hear that the skill set needed for HR has also been evolving. I'm glad to hear that, to be honest, because so often in many organizations, HR does not have the best reputation, as a function. Question then for all three of you: how do we foster that adaptability? How do we upskill on these type of particular skills that you've mentioned so far?
Well, I think that the most important thing is like you need to well, try to stay out of your comfort zone. Well, we like people, we want to stay in our comfort zone because it's pretty safe and predictable, and you don't need to put a lot of efforts to like develop yourself. But in this like, rapidly changing world, if you stuck in where you are, then you might lose a lot of opportunities. So, well, you need to just put you out of your comfort zone and then try to do new things and learn new things. Then I guess that leads you to another opportunities to grow, or yeah, that's what I think.
And so are you suggesting individuals need to put themselves out of their comfort zone, or is this something that as HR and organizations we can help?
Well, definitely at the end of the day, as HR, as a company, we should be the one who should support like our employees can try to new things. But the most important thing is like the people, the individuals, the people, they should have their own mindset to be like flexible and then adaptable. Yeah. Without it, we cannot support them. So I think that's critical. It's pretty crucial.
Yeah, I think Gordon, as you mentioned, I think falls on both sides, right? So from an individual's perspective, at the end of the day, that person has to have that kind of proactiveness or kind of the inherent willingness to want to kind of learn new things, and also have somewhat of a curiosity, I guess, within them, right? To want to learn new things, and some people are just like that. That's built into them, and sometimes people have to work a little harder to do that. But as Sonny mentioned, I mean, those who don't do that will over time just slowly fall behind as others do that. But I think it's also very important for the firm, whether that's HR or the manager or whomever it is, to also kind of facilitate that environment and make sure, one, you give those individuals the right environment with the right tools to do that, but also you can make them like they would get to know that, oh, well, this is something my company or my manager really values. So then obviously they're going to be willing to kind of go out and try new things, and you maybe come to them and say, hey, I've been working on this, or I've been learning this skill. Whereas if they don't see any reward for that, at least while they're in that specific position, they probably wouldn't be so proactive. And if they would be, they're probably doing it just to probably find another job later anyways. You know what I mean? But it kind of falls on both sides, I think.
Gordon, I would probably be more bullish on the responsibility of the organization, because I believe that on the one side, everybody really has it in them to be adaptable, and there is only a small number of people who will do it very naturally. And the reason I say this is because it all comes down to trust. Adaptability comes in the form of trial and error. People to adapt, they need to try new things. And trying new things means they're going to fail along the way. If the organization doesn't set itself up to allow for failure, to make it clear to everybody that making a change and making mistakes along the way is okay. And actually, that is the process of adaptability. That is through the process through which both individuals and organizations learn. If we do not build that trust that that is okay, we as organizations will fail drastically at doing that. And so I actually put the biggest focus on us as the organization to make sure that we enable that behavior to happen. And then even the shyest of person and even the people who are less prone to go and doing it themselves will do it because they know the organization has their backs. And that's why I personally do believe that organizations play a very big role in making sure this happens.
And in a practical sense, if I can just kind of ask a further question about that, is this something that the more senior the level of the person, the more a bigger part of their responsibility it is? How are you interacting with HR to kind of create that environment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the more senior the person, the bigger the responsibility on the culture of the business. At lower levels, it's hard to change culture. You can change the environment around you, but it's not really company culture. It'll be a team spirit. The more senior you are, the more you are affecting culture and the more responsible you are for these things. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with Tomas' side, because, I think that if company like HR or CEO of the company, if he or she take care of the leaders, the senior people, then ultimately like senior people will take care of their employees. That impacts a lot to all. Then we create the culture that we want to make. So that's why I think that's very valid point.
Definitely, and I would add to that: the senior people take care of their people, and their people take care of the customers, and that's then that kind of cycle. I think that's a Richard Branson, chairman of Virgin Group, quote should you take care of your customers first or your people first? Well, if you take care of the people, they take care of the customers. So then it comes back around to the business success. I also want to maybe understand about, there was this mention about curiosity and kind of lifelong learning. What can be some of the kind of examples of how to make sure that it's continuous throughout the path of someone's career within your organizations?
I'll just maybe look at it, I guess, from the life cycle of somebody that would be, let's say, like in my team or division, right? I think it also, well, for myself especially, I think it's understanding where that person is, what they're drawn to naturally, right, from their own interest perspective or what their skill set is. And I think it's a matter of knowing when they've kind of, let's say they've acquired a new skill or they've acquired a knowledge of a certain or a new kind of area or whatever it may be. But then from there, you need to know when, well, now it's time to kind of, let's try and nudge them a little bit more, or let's add something more onto their plate. And I guess it's very much, I think, from my perspective, a case-by-case thing. But from a manager's standpoint, I think it's very important to understand kind of where your staff, I guess, sit within that spectrum, right? And when is the time to push them in a certain area? Or maybe I can say, oh, employee A, they're really interested in this area, so I can push them a little bit more, or get them involved in things a little bit more, give them some more responsibility in this area. And then from there, you can take from there. So that's my perspective, I guess, from a team, I guess standpoint, but from a broader HR perspective, and I guess how you would basically bring that person from entry level to throughout their entire career with an organization. Maybe Sonny and Thomas might have some additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, it is right. So, well, understanding about team dynamics, the group dynamics of the team members, that's very important. So as a manager, I need to understand about my team members, competencies, career aspirations, what will be what are their strengths and development areas. Well, knowing that maybe I could we could make a good team performance, because we all know that who wants what and who could do better. So in that sense, in a broader way, as a HR, it's very critical for HR understand about our people's dynamics, so that whenever we need resources in some area, we need to think about how we could utilize our people to be successful. So that's, I think, that understanding the dynamic is very important.
Mm-hmm. I want to step into a little bit more of your kind of personal experiences. You each have different paths in your careers so far. If you could pick one skill which you feel has been the most valuable for you to be successful in your career so far, what would it be and why?
Well,
yeah.
I can.
No, go ahead, Thomas, please.
For me, what I would say is actually the skill set that nowadays we look for, which is adaptability. Having worked and lived in many countries, as a kid, you're forced to get that adaptability. It's forced on you. It's the environment around you. And that ended up being a positive influence in my professional career, where changing into a market with a completely different culture, landing in Korea, gives you a good ground base to quickly understand what's around you. And you might not be an expert and detailed, but at least you already know the basic stuff and how to move forward. That level of adaptability becomes quite crucial. I do think that it will start to become a natural thing in people, as we have both business culture, but also the world around us changes faster, and people just learn to be adaptable. They don't need to be living in different countries to do so, but it is right now a crucial skill set for at least what I look for in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of that is global mindset. Great performers in one country aren't necessarily great performers in another country, but I can absolutely confirm that you, Thomas, do have that adaptability, because I know you moved to Singapore about a month ago only, and I asked you recently, have you settled in? And you said, yeah, pretty much settled in. I was like, wow, after just 4 weeks. So I think, yeah, you definitely have that. Blair, you wanted to come in on this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for myself, I guess we could say almost public speaking would be something that I really wish I would have kind of taken a hold of it earlier. And when I say public speaking, that ranges from, let's say you're in a meeting with 10 other people, right? Or you're in a sales pitch, or you can be given a presentation or an announcement in front of 100 people, or it could be a couple thousand people. Yeah. And I was one of those individuals actually in high school where I always kind of dodged the presentation, right? I never wanted to be the one kind of get up and do the presentation. Anytime there was a group presentation, like I put up my hand for like, okay, I'm going to be the one doing the research or the data, and the other folks can kind of take the front stage or you know, the front and center with regards to that. But I was kind of thrown into it, even, you know, as I was ending my career at Franklin Templeton. But when I joined here, I was really thrown into it. And, you know, I started being asked to give presentations in front of like people, like, you know, potential investors or investors that were coming here. You know, you're having meetings with more senior executives, things like that. And then it even grew. So sometimes, like I said, up to like, you know, couple thousand people. And it's something that as I kind of got more used to it, I was kind of drawn towards it. You know what I mean? And you kind of get excited about doing it. It became almost like not a sport, but it's something you kind of get up for a little bit. You know, you get ready, you practice, and you kind of like refine your skill a little bit. But I think it's super, super important to be able to narrate, right? What you're trying to sell or pitch to people. Sometimes that's just an idea to your colleagues or your boss, right? And to be able to truly articulate your ideas and thoughts and the value proposition of something. I think these are, you know, invaluable skills, I think, that can basically across any industry, any position, add value. But for me, that would be one that if I had my time back, that would have been something that I would have jumped on a little earlier.
Sunny?
Well, for me, I would say curiosity. I'm always, well, I just finished my performance evaluation with my boss this morning, and then we talked about that one too. But well, I'm like curious person. I want to know everything. I'm very open and eager to learn new things, and I'm always like soliciting feedbacks and want to hear what they think about me, about my performance, about my personality, whatever it is. Then I'm ready to listen, and then from start there, I'm trying to be like a better version of myself. Well, I think that those kind of personality and, well, how do I say, competencies that made me here, I think. That's what I can say.
And some of the discussion so far has been almost kind of putting so-called hard skills on one side, soft skills on another. I'm more of an advocate that so-called soft skills are not really soft. You know, having those tough conversations, public speaking, being curious when people are maybe telling you not to be, or being thrown in at the deep end with adaptability, I don't believe are soft. And so I try to use the term human skills. You know, are they separate from one another? You know, do we have to have a certain batch of hard skills to get the job done, and then human skills allow us to either make it effective or not? You know, do we need human skills to allow us to be able to be good at the hard skills? I'd like to get your perspectives on that.
I've never seen a moment so important to have human skills as now, and I only think it'll be more so in the future. And the reason is because we see all people and as individuals. All employees are individuals. They have a voice and they can speak up, and we're giving them more of a voice as time goes by, which means that we need to be able to then address that, take that feedback, and also know how to communicate back to them. Those human skills are crucial. You don't have them, you won't be able to, if you're a leader, you won't be able to gather the troops and bring them along the journey with you. So, I just think it's going to get more and more so.
Yeah, I would agree with what Thomas just said. I think, and I guess it's not necessarily like binary, if you know what I mean. It's not necessarily like one or the other, and it also depends on the industry, because in some industries, or even in my industry, depending on what the job function is, you may have the greatest soft skills or human skills, but if you don't have the proper technical skills, you're simply not going to be qualified or effective in that job. But I guess as technology kind of becomes more and more ingrained in every part of our lives. You need to know more about how to utilize systems and things like that, but those systems are doing more for you than how you kind of utilize, and as Thomas mentioned, kind of communicate with your team or your clients and things like that, or deal with any sort of, let's say, conflicts. Without those, pretty much it's game over, I guess I would say. So yeah, I would say it's not necessarily binary.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I have the same opinion, because it's not about like hard skill versus like human skills, because we are living in a like tech-driven life. So we need a technology to do something. We need to know something about what we could do in terms of doing your job. But the most important thing is, we are as a one team. We have one goal to reach. Then it means like we need to be very supportive of each other and then collaborate. So that means like we need to understand each other. Then here comes like emotional intelligence. And that means like we need to understand people, what they're thinking, what they feel, how they feel. And I think it just starts from there, and then maybe we can have like a constructive discussion together, and then may find a solution together. So I think, yeah, those skills are all, they're both crucial, I think.
And we've had a great question just come up, and it's so timely that I want to just bring it straight to you all, which is, you have a high performing employee in your organization creating a lot of value, but perhaps lacking these human skills that we're talking about. How to overcome that situation, or what is your company's, organization's approach to that?
Overcoming what exactly? Sorry, Gordon, I missed you there for a while.
So maybe I can frame it in the classic GE back in the day, where people are delivering the results but not living the values. To put it into that kind of context. So they're bringing the results, but they're not living the values. Do you, what do you do with that person? Some organizations are totally comfortable. They just care about the numbers. Doesn't matter, run over that person to get the job done type of atmosphere. Others, and I perhaps maybe suggest that this is where the things are going more so, is that those human skills that we're talking about are absolutely essential and not. And if they're not in abundance, then it's not going to work. And I just want to get your respective approaches to that.
Well, I think it depends on which industry you are in, and what values that company go for. Well, my company, I'm in a sports company, and then that good sports teams that succeed. I think that the kind of team had one thing in common, which is like team spirit. So that's why one of our employer value is like be together. You need to be yourself, but at the end of the day, we are team. We have the same goal. So it means of course, best performance is important. Like star player in a team is very important. But at the end of the day, if you wanna win a game, then it should be like a team. So my case, our company would say that you need to consider the human skills. I don't want to say more than hard skill, but you should also consider yourself that you should be a supportive partnership, supportive team members.
So what are you going to do with that star player who is not being a team player?
Well, then I might use very professional word, but sometimes we have performance improvement plan, but it doesn't necessarily be just performance. it could be their attitudes, it could be their behavioral tendencies. So as HR, as a line manager, maybe we need to do something like performance improvement plan, and then we should give him or her a chance to think about it, and then maybe we'll see the progress. So that's what I can think of.
Sure. Thomas, Blair?
Yeah, and as Sunny was saying, it depends on the culture you want to breed in the company, right? Some companies will be okay with that. It'll have a toxic effect on the culture if people just deliver the numbers and the behaviors are disregarded. And for some, it will be important. I think that as organizations evolve and become more and more mature, it becomes an important thing to address behaviors. You'll see that probably the most mature companies are the ones who address it. But you'll always have the companies that have toxic behaviors and are less mature in that sense.
Yeah, I guess it also depends on the level, right? To what extent is this person causing any sort of like disruptance or issue within the team? And as they reference, some companies are a little bit, they're a little bit more okay with that kind of environment as long as the results are met. And it also somewhat depends on the industry as well. But I mean, from my experience here and just seeing, others in other industries and things like that, it always, in most cases, comes to an end eventually. Because if somebody's, even if they're a star and they're doing really well, if they're kind of dragging others down or causing issues, eventually I feel either the company will get to the point where they've kind of had enough, or also there's probably been so much tension that's built up between even this star and others around them that eventually the star probably will just go somewhere else anyways, and they probably feel they'll have a better opportunity somewhere and just leave. So I feel like it all, in a lot of cases, it kind of plays itself out.
Yeah, I think you raised, in some sense, the key point is that for all the good results that can be created by that star player, there is a ripple effect which is much greater than just so that toxicity that you mentioned, Thomas, that can have such a wide, far-reaching effect on reducing the performance of others. That it really is something that should be addressed. In terms of the most important skills that you've highlighted so far, how do you go about evaluating those? Whether it's somebody within your organization or somebody that you may be interviewing to join your organization, how do you go about assessing the level of those most important skills that you've mentioned?
Right. Well, I guess if it's somebody within your organization or your team, you have a decent sample, right, of seeing what they've done, what they can do, and what their skill set is, and usually you would know, oh, they're pretty in this area, they're here. In this area, they need some more work. In this area, they excel or they overachieve. Interviews, as a lot of you probably know, are sometimes tricky, depending also on what the position is. Sometimes you can get a lot, obviously, just through dialogue and questions. But myself personally, also, a lot of times I like to give them homework, to be honest. And depending on what the specific position is, sometimes that may have a little bit more, let's say, a research angle. So basically, here's something I would like you to check out. Please go, in a day or so, dig around and let's see what you come back with. And a lot of times I would understand they may or may not have access to specific systems or data sets that they might need, or they may not have obviously a very deep or granular understanding of a certain market or product or area, but you get a sense obviously for what their kind of approach is and what their kind of, I guess, tangible kind of at least kind of current skills are. And then just others I know in other teams or other firms, sometimes they'll get people to basically come in and do things a little bit targeted to really kind of see where their skills are. But outside of the organization, always there's a certain level of approximation that comes with it, right? You can never really fully dial in on what someone's skill sets or levels are.
Yeah, and I also think there's a difference between hard skills and what you were calling before the human skills. Hard skills are easier to check in interviews, business cases, etc. The human skills, I have to say, I've made many mistakes in the past because these are the types of things that people know what they should answer.
Yeah, you can be tricked.
But it's real life that really makes a difference. And I honestly think that interviews are not the best format to check that. I honestly don't know what the best way is, but it doesn't work very well in interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that I mentioned like team dynamics before, but before like having an interview, what I normally do is like understanding about team dynamics. So, okay, there should be some gaps that I need to fill. Then I would rather I would more focus on that area. If I'm looking for the area required more like, well, let's say emotional or like more like creativity or like well, like that thing, then I would rather focus on the questions that I might dig in that questions more to figure out this person has that kind of skills. So I think that there should be a lot of research before like going on doing interview, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, Blair, were you talking about an evaluation which is a relative one to peers within the organization?
It could be. It could be, or it could be a matter of just evaluation, I guess, of what expectation is of what I would like to get out of that person. I would have some idea, okay, when I have this, if I hire this person, this is the type of work, right? Or the level of work or the type of things I would like to, get from them or have them kind of bring to the firm. So it could be a relative comparison, or it could be a matter of also, what I would like to basically have that person bring to the table and help out the organization.
It is a challenge. Thomas, you mentioned not sure what exactly the best. Some organizations go down the road of an entire assessment day, right? They take somebody for an entire day and really try to get the authentic person evaluated. Other organizations try to just get them in contact with many different stakeholders to try and get a very wide kind of range of takes on that. Others try to use a very structured approach to make the evaluation as applied to real life scenarios as much as possible. But as you say, people again can be very well trained for interview, knowing what to say. So, and for all that very intensive evaluation, the data is not really that comprehensively that it makes ultimately for better hiring decisions. So, yeah, it's definitely something that continues to be looked at. How can we retain skills that we build up and we then at one point, we're using it to perform at a high level? Any tips for how we can keep those skills sharp?
Well, I would say that probably varies quite a lot depending on what the specific skill is, because if we go back to like something that's a little bit more technical, I feel depending on what it is, I guess that can be lost if you just don't have those reps. You know what I mean? If it's something that requires a lot of kind of reps and kind of like greasing the engine, I guess you could say, and then you kind of step away from it. Sometimes it takes you're rusty, obviously, right? I guess how do we kind of avoid becoming rusty at whatever the skill is? I guess it's different, but I guess one thing that I think could be important also is how you have people also kind of pass that on to others who are following them, or others in the team, or others within the organization. So not only are they utilizing that skill themselves, but they're having to help others kind of, develop that skill. So they have to check their work. They have to, so it's kind of like an ongoing thing. And as you probably know, you've probably heard like, sometimes teaching something, the best way to learn it at a really high level, obviously, right, as well. So that's just kind of my two cents on that.
Well, I strongly agree with what Blair said. More and more, you're going to practice what you are currently doing. Then you'll be, at some point, you'll be a certain level that you can teach someone, you can influence, you can like coach someone. Then if you like start coaching and then teaching someone, then I guess like, I believe that that will make you another level. So yeah, that's very valid point, I guess. Yeah.
Thomas, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I think it's a difficult topic where I could give a long-winded answer to, but I think it'll change skill set by skill set. It'll be different, and some will naturally happen. Some you need to force it to happen.
Mm-hmm. I think the analogy that I like to apply to skills and learning is that it's really like a bathtub full of water, and the plug has been taken out, so the water level is constantly going down, and you have to fill up that bath. You have to put more water in order to keep the level at the same height. And if you're not constantly practicing and kind of developing that skill, then it will naturally just go down through attrition. Some of the things which in RDI, some of the activities which we did a lot of before the pandemic, which then we had a pause on for an extended period, where I was very comfortable doing, all of a sudden, oh wow, this is awkward. I haven't done this kind of thing in several months, and so that definitely brought it to the forefront for me in that aspect. We've got a relatively short time left now for the Q&A, so perhaps. I want to encourage anybody who has any questions to submit in the Q&A box, and we can come around to them at this time. In the meantime, we do have one very specific career-related question, which is how can a newly graduated foreigner be visible in the job market in Korea so that they don't just apply online and actually increase the probability of getting the resume reviewed? I'm not sure how much skill connection that is there, but would like to hear your insights on that.
Maybe I'll just jump at it first, just because we
are a foreigner in Korea, yeah.
and as you know, we've been trying to fill some positions. So, and I've had some foreigners apply for the position. I guess the question, I'm not sure how they were, approaching it. So what I mean is, like, let's say for my job posting, some of them were just through the traditional, the Korean kind of company website where they post the jobs. So one, if you don't speak Korean well enough, you probably won't know how to get to those websites. And as you probably know as well, in Korea, you have usually companies have a typical kind of what's the right word? I guess it's almost like a questionnaire, right? You have to fill out all this information. Well, at least at our firm we have it. Then you have these different questions, and it's all in Korean. So if you don't speak Korean very well, that might be tough. Then sometimes jobs are posted on LinkedIn or in these kind of ways. And that way, it's probably a little bit easier for them to get access. But I would say it all comes down to one, timing and opportunity. Do you have some very specific skill set that stands out that company is looking for, which is probably not the most frequent situation. Then the other one comes down to, and I know it's almost become somewhat cliche, I guess, but is networking, right? Because you got to think, a lot of times too, I guess from a Korean firm's perspective, the first people that look at these applications are HR teams, especially if it's a local Korean firm. And unless the mandate from the firm is to hire somebody who may or may not be a foreigner, let's say it's flexible, I'm not sure the HR team would bring it forward. Do you know what I mean? Like it might almost like kind of get kind of like, this doesn't meet the requirements or the criteria. And I just think it makes screening a little tougher. I just think it comes down to basically maybe knowing somebody in that organization or get introduced to somebody within their organization. And I guess that basically is applicable to not just a foreigner trying to get a job in Korea, but anyone trying to get a job anywhere, obviously, right? That increases the probability of getting hired, obviously, as opposed to just going straight through the application process.
Yeah, 100% agree. My experience of Korea is that networking will be very important. And it's not that that's right. We can debate if it's right or wrong, but that's what works. And do not forget that the senior people who sometimes are taking the decision on who gets hired and who doesn't are not doing the filtering. So there's that first barrier that you need to get through, which Blair was mentioning, and the networking, especially for a foreigner, it becomes fundamental.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's two elements to it. There's the getting noticed, which I think you've already covered, but then there's also getting through the screening. I think skills are particularly an area in a resume that most people don't know how to put down onto their resume. And as long as the resume still is the primary way of applying through a company, you can't get away from that. I think people tend to try to want to write just a long list of buzzwords that they might be highly skilled at or not skilled at, or maybe they're aspirational that they want to be skilled at. And of course, that long list of words is meaningless. So I would always say, wherever possible, even if you feel you don't have any skills, you definitely have transferable skills from any kind of experience that you've had. So put those transferable skills down along with other skills that you have in your experience, and try where possible to quantify them so that they can be evaluated. Do you have a certificate in that particular thing, if it's a language or a technical skill? Or is there a piece of experience, if you're saying that you have your high leadership skills, then the experience of being a leader in a certain circumstance will allow people to be able to say, okay, yeah, this person is saying they are highly skilled at it, and they actually are based on this experience. I think that's a way to kind of get through the process. We've had another question here about mentoring, which I think is perhaps a nice follow-on from the last question, which is, do you personally, panel members, mentor junior team members? And what would be some advice for somebody who would like to get a mentor? How should they reach out to senior leaders?
Ask. Yes, yes, I do. And ask. Most people are happy to do so.
So ask directly if.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, nobody has ever asked me on LinkedIn, but I would even be open to that on LinkedIn if somebody asked it in the right way.
Yeah, it would be good that, well, there's a structured mentoring program that company could offer. Then that's pretty easy for like junior, like young people to apply to. But if there is not, then yeah, just ask. I need a mentor. You could be my mentor. To support me, then that's very straightforward. But I think that's a very effective way to get a right mentor.
Yeah, and don't forget that mentoring goes both ways. We also learn from the people we're supposed to be mentoring from. So I think it goes both ways, and it's always, the reality is it's also a little bit of an ego boost to the person who you're asking to, because you're appreciating their knowledge. So just ask. Most people will say yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have just a couple minutes left, and another question has come through. There's an increased ask for digital skills highlighted in LinkedIn and other professional websites. What would be your top 3 digital skills which would be considered relevant in the evolving corporate world?
Well, I would say that's a big word, right? Digital well, a couple big words, digital skills. And I think when it comes to digital, the most important thing is, yes, we can get in, and this also varies because some aspects of digital or digital marketing, it has like a qualitative component to it, right? Or let's say an artistic component to it, whereas some is very technical, right? Very quantitative. So you can have some people, they understand digital or the concept of, let's say a digital marketing, if you want to talk about that particular area of digital, and you can understand, let's say, customer journeys, right? Or you can understand, how do I best want to put together a campaign and tell a very powerful story? But that person may not have a clue how to execute some of the very, very, very technical aspects of that. Let's say if we talk about programmatic marketing, for example, that's a totally different area, right? I guess it kind of ties into everything we've talked about, but I guess the most important thing is that person has to, I don't want to say love, that's a strong term, but they have to be really want to be a part of that, area, right? Or develop that skill, because it's also a lifelong learning thing. As we talked about in general, just like bouncing around, broader skills as your career, grows and develops, even within digital, what's happening now compared to 10 years ago is a totally different ballgame. So you have to be somebody that, you inherently have a very strong desire to learn about it. So it's not something that like, my boss is telling me, run these, Google display ads and do this. You're somebody who is just always going to be interested in that. And I've only touched on, I guess, one component of digital, which is kind of a little bit more the digital marketing side, but digital has just become such a broad term that I think it applies to everything. I think there's a qualitative and a quantitative component of it. But if you're not, let's say, willing to really kind of marry yourself to that, that area or that concept and really develop it over, maybe not necessarily your lifetime, but within, that position or that certain component of your career, then it's going to be really hard to compete with others that are trying to get, that job from you.
Sure. Would anybody else like to highlight any particular ones?
It's a catch-all phrase, digital skills. I don't like it because I think every single job nowadays has digital skills in it.
Yeah.
It will depend on what you do, right? There's no top 3 digital skills for me. It's
exactly.
Okay. Well, I think in that case, then we can wrap it up there. Thank you so much to Sonny, Thomas, and Blair for being with us on this panel, sharing your insights and experiences and thoughts on this important topic. Thank you to everybody who's joined as a participant and asked questions. I really appreciate that. This has been the final session of People Matters 2022. You can hear that I'm beginning to get a bit hoarse now after being online, honing my digital skills over the last couple of days. But yeah, just a massive thank you to everybody to have been a part of this. If you do want to know more, please do feel free to reach out to us. We're very active on LinkedIn. We also have our website, of course, you can see here on my background. More than happy to have one-on-one conversations or anything else that you're curious about. Thank you so much to everybody and have a great weekend.